Opposition Outlook. Let's dive in.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome. It is Wednesday night here on the AATBirds weekly report. It is time for yet another Opposition Outlook. We're talking all things Washington Commanders this week. I had to make sure that I really enunciated that. I am Chip at Chip for the Birds, joined as always by Johnny U at Johnny U9322, joined by Mike Bowers at Rewind CEO, and joined tonight we have a really cool guest with us. It is Lake Lewis Jr. He is an ABC News morning news anchor, producer of WOAY in Washington. You run the sportsjourney.com. You run the After Practice podcast. I mean, you do a lot of things in the media world. So we want to thank you for carving out a couple minutes to be with us tonight.
No problem, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Let's jump right into it. It is the first year of the Washington Commanders, and we talked a little bit in the green room about the former Redskins, then the Washington football team, then the Commanders. So before we even get into the football aspect of things, what has the overall vibe been in Washington? And I have to say Washington, D.C., because we know that the coffee mugs say Washington State. What has the overall vibe been with the new name, with the new feel of the team?
I mean, I think the fans are just starved for a winner. I mean, I've said this before, they could be called the Cupcakes. And if they were winning games, there'd be a lot of cupcakes, jerseys and T-shirts everywhere in D.C. Fans just want a winner on the field. And right now that's the issue, because they, saw them lose to Detroit. And it wasn't that they lost to Detroit. They pretty much got beat up by Detroit. Mm-hmm. So you just don't know where this team is. And then obviously your team comes in town this week looking pretty good, flying high, no pun intended. So I think the overall vibe is the fan base is still the same fan base here. Uniforms change, colors change, name change. Still the same players that were on the roster last year, pretty much. So you just want to see some wins. And once you get that done, it doesn't matter what their name is.
So I want to bring this up. I'm going to have I'm going to have Mike do it. You can talk about Carson Wentz. I'll have him ask the question about Wentz.
I'd love to, yeah. So Carson, I like Carson Wentz. He's shined in his first two starts. Johnny said he's been okay, but I think he's shined. We'll say that. Do you think the Commanders have found their guy? And just to give everybody out there in listener and viewer land, so far on the season, he is 57 of 87, 650 yards passing, 8 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Jalen Hurts did throw his first interception of the season, albeit it was on a tip pass. So unfortunately, it does count against his stat line, but wasn't really his fault. But what do you think about what Carson's done so far for you guys? And what do you think about him and the future of the team going forward?
I mean, that's a great question. I think he's played really well. I mean, obviously, you guys know this from his days there. I mean, he's erratic. That's probably the best way to describe him. He makes some great throws that a lot of quarterbacks can't make in this league. He's big, he's strong, but at times, like I said, he has some balls that sails on him, and it's kind of ironic because he's almost 6'6", and he's overthrowing guys that are 6'5", 6'6", tight ends. So that's just something that that it's in his DNA. I mean, that's what he's going to do. But he also, like I said, makes some great throws, and he's made some throws that a lot of quarterbacks that I've covered here in my 13 years covering this team haven't been able to make. And I think the difference for him now is that he's got some weapons here. He's got some playmakers here with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel. Logan Thomas is still kind of working his way back from a knee injury. So his best ball's coming. So they've got some pieces. Brian Robinson, a promising running back from Alabama, could be back in 2-3 games. So
that's amazing to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great story. I mean, if he can come back. But I think he'll open up their offense because they'll have a true running back in there, and Antonio Gibson will be more of a Swiss Army knife guy. But anyway, with Carson Wentz, I just think with him, it's all about being consistent and not letting the lows get to him, because I had a good friend of mine was a coach in Philadelphia, and he said that Carson sometimes would, when things went bad, the attitude changed a little bit. So hopefully he's at a point in his career where he knows this is kind of, I don't want to say this is it for him to be a starting quarterback, but to be a franchise quarterback, this is it. So if it doesn't work here in DC, he may get opportunities to start games in the NFL going forward, but I don't know if it's as a team savior. And I think if he plays well this year, and the offense can continue to put up points and numbers, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't try to re-sign him to a long-term deal.
So speaking of Carson Wentz, of course, with your quarterback, the big thing is your offensive line to protect the quarterback. Right. And they lost Chase Roullier. He got hurt on IR. And, just looking at the offensive line, they got Andrew Norwell. They have Trey Turner, Sam Cosmi. How is that offensive line in terms of now? I know their center is now gone. How is that offensive line playing so far in the first couple of games of the season?
I mean, it's a work in progress. And, anytime you get rid of a Brandon Sheriff, the 4-time Pro Bowler, you're going to have to replace a Pro Bowl player. And they had to do that, 2 years before that with Trent Williams. And you see how well he's playing in San Fran. Morgan Moses, another guy they replaced. And it was kind of inexplicably like why they made those moves. I understand that maybe guys wanted a lot of money, but they happen to be some of the best at their position. And that goes with the territory. So, when they got rid of those 3 players, you're talking about 3 veterans too that had played together for years. It was kind of like you knew that they were going to have to take a step back a little bit and develop some younger players. Sam Cosmi, they drafted from Texas last year, and he's got a lot of promise. I kind of think Sam Cosmi needs to move inside to where Brandon Sheriff was actually and not be a tackle. That's just me. But with all that said, last week, Detroit was all over these guys. Washington could not contain, Hutchinson. He had a career game and second start. They just couldn't keep anyone off Carson Wentz. And for Carson Wentz to throw again for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a touchdown, he did that under duress, guys. I mean, so you got to kind of give him some credit. But if he can just stand back there upright, I'd like to see what he could do with the weapons that he has on the offense.
And, mentioning the offense in general, I mean, you have brought in a lot of weapons, but the way that this team was built, at least even before Carson Wentz, was through your defense. And obviously, I looked the face right there. And obviously, Chase Young hasn't played, and I know there's some contention in the franchise for the injury and then the re-aggravation of the injury. And then you look and you see that so far you've allowed 22 points to a Jacksonville team that doesn't have, in my opinion, a ton of offensive weapons. You allowed 36 to a Detroit team that, apparently is on the better and on the up and up. But is there a concern for this defense right now in Washington?
Absolutely, there's a concern. And there's been a concern, guys, for the last 2 years with Jack Del Rio being their defensive coordinator. I tweeted this out earlier this week after the game, actually, in Detroit, that when Ron Rivera was hired, he told us in the media room that day, win, lose, or draw, you're gonna know you played us. It's gonna be a physical game. You're gonna get beat on. Our defense is gonna play fast. We're gonna play downhill. That's not what's happening, no. And it's been like that for a while. They're not being able to just react and play, reactionary football. They're not doing that. They're thinking like robots out on the field. Hence, big plays that are given up to them. Guys are out of position. That goes back to the scheme. That goes back to coaching. And I think most of the fan base here, I know for a fact, the fan base here is tired of Jack Del Rio. They want to see a change at defensive coordinator because they look at it like you have, 4 first rounders on your defensive line. Yeah. Even before Chase Young got hurt last year, he was starting to struggle. And I tell people all the time, his rookie year coming out of Ohio State, where he was defensive rookie of the year, he hadn't been coached up by Washington yet. No offense.
Right.
I mean, he was playing off what he did at Ohio State. But once teams got film on him and now you need to put him in a different setting, different scheme, that didn't work. So the only player for my money that has earned his money, that's a first rounder is Jonathan Allen. Other than that, Ron Payne, Montez Sweat's the invisible man right now. They've got to figure out a way to get these guys that do have some talent being able to play in the right proper positions. And that goes back to coaching again.
Like, I have a question. What do you think about the matchup between the Eagles secondary and Washington's wideouts? You guys got some good wideouts there. Yeah, I'm excited, especially, Darius Slay. Probably, I was really thinking about it today. I don't remember the last time I saw an Eagles defensive back have that good of a game as Darius Slay had. And that last interception he had, not everyone knows, he was hurt. Zach McPherson was trying to come in. He waved him off. He's like, no, I got this. So I'm just curious. I mean, John Dotson, I'm a Penn State fan. John Dotson actually grew up about 20 minutes away from where I live right now. He grew up in
Penn State
Nazareth.
alum, so we are.
Yeah, Penn State.
So you were very excited to get Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, you must have been.
Listen, I was so tired of seeing other teams in the division get some of our star players. Like you guys have Miles, Dallas has Micah, and of course Saquon's in New York. So I'm like, when are we gonna get ours? So I do like him there.
Damn good one, because I've been following him since high school. But I'm just curious. Bradbury looks really good. Slay obviously looks good. I would say that probably our weakest point right now is our safeties, with Marcus Epps still adjusting to being a full-time starter, and CJ Gardner-Johnson, I can never say his name, still being the new guy in town and adjusting to the scheme. So what do you think about that matchup right there? Because to me, I think that's where, if Washington gets the edge, that they could win it possibly.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, looking at some film and looking at, matchups, and I agree. I like Slay quite a bit. He's worth every penny you guys gave him. But the wild card to me in this game now might be Curtis Samuel, because as you just mentioned, who's going to cover in the slot, who's going to be the guy underneath. And Curtis Samuel gets a lot of attention. Carson has kind of made him his most targeted receiver, so far. I mean, he had 8 catches, 7 catches last week, but the targets are like double digits every game. So that's going to be the wild card. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised, believe it or not, if Slay actually somehow finds Curtis Samuel. And that's going to be something I'm looking to see. Terry McLaurin's now become kind of like the big play receiver, not so much the possession guy. He's the guy that when he's touching the ball, it's for all or for not. So, that's going to be an interesting thing. But I do think that Washington has a chance to attack the middle of the field, and that's where a guy like Logan Thomas, their tight end, this could be kind of like his coming back from the injury type game where you can see it all put together. That's going to be pretty interesting. Philadelphia does have some really nice athletic linebackers that can cover. But I think once you get beyond that second tier and you get to the safeties, that's kind of the iffy spot on your defense, if you ask me.
So if I flip it now and talk about the Eagles, playmakers in AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and then you have Dallas Goedert, like, how does Washington, deploy their secondary? Because looking at their secondary, you get to the point where what kind of defense can they play? Are they going to play a man? Are they going to play a zone? How do you think they're going to deploy that secondary against these playmakers?
That's a great question. And that's something that we've been asking ourselves for the longest time. What defense are they playing?
Right.
They play a soft zone. And, that's why a guy like William Jackson, came in from Cincinnati, was a highly coveted free agent 2 years ago. He played press man pretty much his whole career in Cincinnati, and he comes here and he's laying off receivers 10 yards, and in this league now, you can't give a guy like Devontae Smith, you can't give him a cushion because he's still that fast. He'll get the ball in front of you and run right by you. So I think guys like that who are also smaller, I think you need to jam them at the line, kind of disrupt their pattern right off the bat. So Washington, to me, I'm just looking at Philadelphia's offense, and you guys are loaded. I mean, it's deep. So You look at AJ Brown. How do you even play him? I mean, you could try to press man him; he's going to run you over. If you lay off of him, he's quick enough to catch a ball, and then you got to come up and hit him, which is tough to do. So, I like what Philadelphia is doing. I think he's perfect complement for Devontae Smith. I mean, you have speed and you have power on the other side, and they actually are interchangeable. So, Watkins, I like him quite a bit. He pretty much booted out Jalen Reagor.
Yes, he did.
Oh, for sure.
So that was a good move too. He's got a lot of speed. So I don't know what Washington's brain trust is thinking, but I think most people think that the only way you're going to beat Philadelphia is you got to get physical with them. Because if you turn this into a track meet, if you let them play in open space, and especially with Jalen Hurts, you give him time, he'll take off on you too. He's good for 90 yards a game rushing. So it's going to be interesting. I think for Washington, though, if they're going to be the defense that, we thought they should have been for the last 3 years, this is the game that you can shut a lot of us up, because right now we're very critical of what we're watching.
And speaking of critical, and, you guys have Carson Wentz.
Mm-hmm.
He has not been historically known to take criticism very well. We saw it in Philadelphia when Jalen Hurts was drafted. He wanted out. We saw over in Indianapolis when Jonathan Taylor was getting the ball and leading the offense, and all Carson Wentz had to do was make a couple of throws and lead him to the playoffs, and he struggled. This is a big game for Carson Wentz. Is this the kind of game that could win or lose him the locker room?
I don't think he could be lost in the locker room just yet if they lose. And I say that because he's opened up the offense because of the throws that he can make. So if you're a Terry McLaurin, you're happy that now you can run the ball and you can, go downfield. A lot of these players, the McLaurins of the world, the Logan Thomases of the world, they've been doing it with quarterbacks by committee. And now they're hoping that Carson Wentz can be the guy that stays here for a year or 2, 3 years, because it's going to help their games flourish at the same time. They have to learn another ball, how quarterbacks throw, all these different things. And they didn't have a guy that could throw the ball 40, 50 yards down the field. I mean, Taylor Heineke's arm is not, he's a professional quarterback, but his arm's not a professional quarterback of, throwing it everywhere. He can't do that. So, Fitzpatrick, we didn't even really get a chance to see him. He had a cup of coffee and got hurt. So, this is something different. It's a nice look. Carson Wentz looks every bit the part of a franchise quarterback. It's just, like I said, when things go bad, how is he going to be able to handle this? Because this is a different market. Philadelphia is a brutal market. It's very tough, as you guys know. But this market here is Washington has a love affair with quarterbacks. That's how it's always been. But when you start playing bad, they don't want anything to do with you anymore. They won't even give you a second chance. You're done. They want the backup. So it's just going to be interesting to see if that day comes, how he'll handle it. I hope he's mature enough now, 27, 28, that he understands that he doesn't have a whole lot of chances. So, we'll see how it plays out.
Well, and I kind of want to piggyback on that real quick, just the idea of managing expectations, because, look, I know it's early in the season, and just like, for example, the Eagles' expectations have gone up considerably based on their first 2 games, where it was, we're going to win the division, to, are we the best team in the NFC? After 2 games and kind of moving forward, what are the expectations for the Washington Commanders? Are they hoping to get a wild card? Are they just hoping to win a certain amount of games? Do they think that they can still contend for the NFC East?
Well, that's another great question. Before the season started, everyone always asked my prediction, and I said that I thought at best, if everything was rocking and rolling and they had balls, rolling their way, I only could see 10 wins as their ceiling. And that was if everything went great. They've won 7 games the past 2 seasons. I thought having Carson Wentz healthy and rejuvenated could be good enough for 2 more wins. So that's 9. Right now, I don't even see that. I could see them being right where they've been the past 2 years, 7 wins, maybe 8. The offense has played really well. I know they laid an egg in the first half against Detroit, but they came back really strong in the second
Right.
half and picked up where they were against Jacksonville. And now the Jacksonville win doesn't look as bad now, considering that Jacksonville just blew up the Colts, or maybe the Colts are just that bad with Matt Ryan. But that doesn't look like a bad win for them. But like I said, the way they lost to Detroit, it kind of just, the eye test looked to me like Detroit looked like a better football team than Washington. And if that's the case, that's a problem, because Dan Campbell's in his second year in Detroit, first-time head coach. Ron Rivera's been a coach for a long time. The irony is Ron Rivera has 3 winning seasons in 12 years as a coach. You can do the math there and think about that.
Interesting. I thought Ron Rivera had more winning seasons.
Nope.
I mean,
Just
Carolina
3.
was. They just felt like they were so good for so long.
I mean, they had a 15-1 year, and with league MVP at the time, Cam Newton, lost in the Super Bowl, and then they had a couple of they had a 10-win season and an 11-win season. But yeah, those were the only 3, and they weren't consecutive either, by the way. So I tell people all the time, be careful what you wish for, because listen, I've been here for 13 years, and I was really tight with Sean McVay and Zach and Kevin O'Connell, and these are guys that we kept pushing for, the young guns, the next wave. And all those guys got out the building. Kyle Shanahan, all these, they were all in the same staff, literally. Yeah.
That staff was absurd.
Yeah, look at what they're doing around the league now. I mean, one won a Super Bowl. The other ones have been in the playoffs. Minnesota is better than what they looked on Monday night. I mean, they looked horrible. And
they did, and we were okay with it.
Yeah. That's a tribute to you guys. But I think if they flip-flop and played in Minnesota, I'm not saying they'd win, but they would look much better than what they did.
Right.
But we saw that story with Kirk Cousins, too, while he was here. That's not the same quarterback on the road at all. So
no.
He needs that dome.
Deep in dunk.
Before we get into some predictions, because we're coming up on towards the end of your segment with us, and again, we do appreciate you joining us tonight. I don't know how much you can say, but I do want to ask if you have any insider information about the guy who runs your team. Because, man, Dan Snyder is not one of my favorite people, and I'm putting it very nicely, but between again, from an outsider view here, the nickel and diming, this upgrades to the stadiums, whether it's railings or whether it's pipes or whether it's, the turf that eats knees, to making the mistakes with the merchandise, to everything that happened with emails and everything. I mean, I guess I want to know, do you have anything that would let us know why he still is allowed to be an owner in the NFL? Or if the tides are turning and the fans are kind of like, okay, we're a little bit done with this guy.
Oh, no, the fans have been done with Dan Snyder. There's nothing to turn. That page is already been turned. The fan base here, they don't want him as the owner, and that's the bottom line. Even the true diehards that only see burgundy and gold, they don't want him as the owner because they feel like he's ruined a once proud franchise, and so that's not ever going to change. They could win the Super Bowl and they're still going to want him out of there. But as far as like why he still is the owner, I just think, man, you are the company you keep. And I think that he's friends with some other owners around the league, and there might be some incriminating things that are out there that sometimes allow you to keep your post, because there is no way that a common man who's done some of these things or been part of something would still have that platform. We saw Donald Sterling with the Clippers, say a word that people were upset about, and they got him up out of there. This guy's done far worse.
Well, if you look at
you have the guy from the Suns. Yeah. He's literally in the process of selling the team right now.
Absolutely. I mean, but that goes to show you too, as far as the collective bargaining and all that stuff, the power that the NBA players have, as opposed to the lack of power that NFL players have. And that's why this stuff continues to happen in the NFL, not the NBA. I mean, you're dealing with guys in the NBA are I mean, 3-4 year deals worth $300 million. I mean, they're in a 10-year span, they're billionaires. LeBron's a billionaire now, and they're guaranteed contracts. So they have ultimate power as how they want stuff conducted. NFL players don't make that kind of money at all. And
Right.
the ones who do make the money, half of that's only guaranteed. So I just think that the other owners around the league, until Washington truly starts bleeding money, he's going to be here. And right now, Forbes put out their list of, top wealthiest franchises in sports and NFL, and Washington was number 7. And that's with all the losing. When he came in here, they were number 2. So they have fallen, but they haven't fallen enough.
Right. As soon as they hit number 11, we have a different conversation.
So what I want to do to kind of end this, if you can, I'm not sure. Sometimes the guests can't give a prediction, but we always ask for like a prediction. If you can't do a prediction, then do a key matchup that you want, that you're looking forward to see for the game.
Well, I'll give you the prediction right off the top. I'm actually taking the Eagles 24-17. I think it's a divisional game. I don't see anyone running away with this game. Definitely not Washington, but I don't see the Eagles blowing Washington out by any means. If this was in Philadelphia, it might be a different conversation. But I do think that Washington's much better at home. I mean, the first game against Jacksonville was the first time, I can honestly say this, in past 2 years, COVID or not, it was the first time that I saw a pro-Washington crowd. It was like 80% Washington fans. Normally in that stadium, it's 50-50 every game.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see, because you guys do travel quite well down here, I'm curious to see, is it going to be 50-50 this week, or will it be more like 70-30? And if it is 70-30, I think the game will be close because of that. But I just think Philadelphia right now has too much talent, a lot of confidence in their young players, and that's what you want to start their careers. And they're starting to believe that, hey, why not us? And as long as Dak Prescott's hurt, you got to keep playing, because the Giants right now are 2-0. So, you got to keep playing. And if you want to be good, I always say this, people say this about Washington, if you want to be good, you got to beat good teams. Well, if you want to be great, you got to beat bad teams. And
you have to beat up on bad teams.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I'm taking the Eagles 24-17.
All right. Lake, we appreciate you joining us tonight, man. You were fantastic. I mean, I love the back and forth. I love the openness. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about where they can find you on all the media platforms?
Sure. On social media, on Twitter, it's Lake Lewis. On Instagram, Facebook, that's, the old people's social media. Lake Lewis Jr. You can find us on sportsjourney.com, and then on social media on Sports Journey is sportsjourney.com. And then, of course, every morning, 6 to 7, I'm on ABC News morning anchor, and I do Good Morning Americas every day. So, yeah, lots of stuff. And then my podcast is the After Practice podcast. And that's also here on ABC, so you can check that out as well. I'd like to get you guys on my podcast.
We're ready. Let us know. Time and place.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, we're going to try and meet up with you on Sunday when we all are traveling down there. But again, we want to thank you for joining us tonight on the Opposition Outlook here on the AATBirds Weekly Report.
Thanks, Lake.
Absolutely. Had a great time. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
So, my goodness. I just want to talk about this Philadelphia Eagles team for a second. Because now I was not on the weekly show last week. Who took, I know we'll review this, but was I the only one that took the Vikings?
I believe so.
I
can verify that.
Yeah, I believe so. You were the only one. Now, we didn't get to announce your pick and your lock. You sent to me after. So
right.
We'll go over all that.
We'll go
but
over-
you were the only one to pick Minnesota.
So I did. I picked Minnesota. My wife gave me a hard time about it. And going into last week's game, I
she
still
was
didn't
right.
know what this. And she was right, 100%. And we're going to go over that on our weekly pickoff as well.
Mike just raises his hands.
But again,
You're just like,
yeah, she was. But I didn't know what this Eagles team was. And now I've watched them play against, on paper, what is a really good Vikings team. And they dominated them. And in my opinion, and I'm curious to know what your guys' thoughts are on this, have we still seen this Eagles team at full capacity?
you know what? I'm going to say it like this. Full capacity, I'm going to say no. And Jalen Hurts said it best. And even I think Sirianni said it too. Yes, they played really well. It was a great game, but there's still more that they can do. They can still get better. And especially when you look at the second half, they didn't score any points in the second half. So of course they're going to look that way and always want to get better. But no point in that game did I feel Minnesota after halftime in the third and fourth quarter. No point in that game I thought Minnesota was going to come back and win.
I was not worried at all.
No.
Just because the way the defense was playing, the way the corners were playing, and just the way the offense was able to, they were still able to work the ball. They, unfortunately, they had the block field goal, which, hey, got to give the punter credit. If he doesn't make that tackle, it's a touchdown.
Wait.
Don't wait.
Hold on.
It's true.
Wait.
It's true.
I got some Aaron Sipus hate that I got to discuss real quick. So it wasn't his fault that Peterson got around the edge. It wasn't his fault that the field goal was blocked. And he did go out of his way and made a great tackle, a game-saving. The laces were in. Had the ball gone off, it would have gone any which way. We don't even know.
We don't know. But it ended up.
Laces out, Marino.
Charles, you're talking about the team operating at full capacity. One thing that concerns me is and I understand that one of Jalen's best attributes is his legs. However, I'm still concerned with how much they're running him, and I thought that they were passing too much earlier to start the game. I believe it was his second touchdown run where it looked like he was going to go out of bounds about the 5 or 6 yard line, but he pivoted back. And look, it was a great run. He got in for the touchdown, and that's great. I felt like they would have scored a touchdown anyway. If you have a mobile quarterback, I would prefer him to save things like that for the playoffs. I want the starting quarterback to get there healthy because we've seen he's leaving himself open to take a lot of big hits. Let your running backs do that.
But the thing about it is he never – I understand the one hit with Detroit, which was a dirty hit, which, of course, that can happen when you are running.
Very dirty.
Yeah.
The thing about it is he's never in that position. Whenever he runs the ball, he never gets that full contact hit. It just seems like he's either go out of bounds or he goes down or – I understand anything can happen.
Only takes one time.
Listen, anything can happen. You can.
We saw with Trey Lance, and now the 49ers are better because they have Jimmy Garoppolo again.
Well, stock up for your 49ers fantasy assets.
Listen,
I already grabbed him, by the way.
What about Dak Prescott? He wasn't running. He was in the pocket and threw the ball and broke his thumb. So
right, we know things happen. I think that I do agree with Mike, though, that the point is that this team right now, you saw it in Detroit, and I'm glad that they toned it back a lot. But you saw in Detroit, they were so one-dimensional. And yes, that one dimension is exceptional. As JD was saying, he said before the season that Jalen Hurts as MVP is a legitimate thing. And I know that the bets people were coming in with it. And I know he was a high pick on a lot of fantasy teams.
We're actually putting him in the Hall of Fame this weekend. Got his jacket all sized up for him. He's in there.
But I agree that the usage, like you have these running backs. What's that?
Can you put me on the bottom? I like being down there better.
Sure.
Put the old man down here by himself.
I was going to say something, but I'm just going to. No.
Yeah, keep it clean there, Johnny boy. But again, the usage rate, when you have all of these offensive weapons and you have decent running backs, I'm not going to say that any of them are game changers. They're not Jonathan Taylors. They're not Derrick Henrys. They're not any of these big name guys. They're good running backs. You got to utilize them more just to take a little bit of the pressure off of him.
I agree.
Just because you don't need those extra hits. You want to elongate his career. you
Miles
want to make
looks
sure that he
really
plays.
good right now too. Sanders is running the ball really well. Boston Scott looks good when he gets the ball. Kenneth Gainwell in space as a receiver. He had that one play that was called back, unfortunately, which would have been a huge play. Their running backs look really good right now. And hey, newsflash, when Trey Sermon gets up to speed, there is another tool that this offense has. Now, there's a guy, Matt Waldman. He does a lot of scouting. I listen to his podcast because I do a lot of fantasy football stuff. But he said one of the reasons that Trey Sermon was released, he's not a fit in San Francisco's system. I understand that people think that everybody's plug and play in that system, but it's not true.
No.
He was saying that Trey Sermon is a much better fit for the Philadelphia Eagles system than the 49ers system. If he comes in and looks good enough, and Miles Sanders wants a lot of money, there's a possibility that Trey Sermon's your starting running back next year, which means you have to go out and invest in defensive line. I'm worried about defensive line. That is our biggest.
So am I.
Right now. You are going to have to figure out, are you paying Jalen Hurts the amount of money that he's going to garner, or are you going in a different direction? There's going to be a lot of guys that you have to pay money to, so they're going to have to go cheap at running back. And the fact is, that solution may be here, but still, if you got a guy behind center, Jalen Hurts, that you want to pay $30 to $35 million a year, letting him run double digits every game is just going to decrease his potential of a long career.
And to add on to that, if so you go cheap at running back and then you have the Jalen Hurts rushing tour that we do, then all of a sudden, heaven forbid he gets hurt, you have a different offense with Gardner Minshew running this offense.
100%.
One that requires better running backs.
I agree. Yeah, and that's my concern right there. That's why every time he runs, I'm like, it takes what we've seen it with McNabb. Remember 2006? I mean, they probably could have advanced more in the playoffs if they could have tackled, but that was a non-contact injury on a run. So it's something that concerns me when you have a mobile quarterback.
My only other I have a couple of concerns with this team. Again, it's early on, so we're trying to figure out those couple of things. I am trying to figure out, again, you remember early on in last season, penalties were a huge concern. Yeah. And then they cleaned it up. And I don't know if it was this officiating crew and that they decided to call the illegal man downfield constantly last week, but it brought back a lot of plays. Should we be concerned about the discipline of this team? I'm not, but I don't want these penalty calls.
That Sayamalu call, I think that's one of the one you were talking about. That was a gray area, in my opinion.
There was like
three of them that were called.
Yeah.
And there was just like, come on. Like,
yeah. I'm not worried about that. I mean, one thing, I'll tell you what, my main concerns with this team right now are this. Now and in the future. One, defensive line. That's my biggest concern. Number two, do we lose Shane Steichen in the offseason to a head coaching job? Everyone said
100%.
But I'll tell you what, man, since Steichen took over play calling, and you saw how the offense looked during the Doug Peterson era when Frank Reich left. So, you know what I mean? It's one of those things.
I want to talk about your point, because your first point there, talking about the defensive line, and I want to talk about the pass rush. It's a little bit of a concerning thing because you lose Derek Barnett, and the team still only has 52 players. So you still can add a veteran. There are some veteran players out there that possibly can help you in terms of a pass rush, being able to rotation. But I just think, you have a guy like Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, and you keep dropping them into coverage. And it's just like, I know they want to do the rotation basis with the defensive linemen, with Davis and Tui Pelotu, and you have Hargrave and Cox and BG and Sweat, all these guys. But, Patrick Johnson, they're trying to fit all these guys in. I just think that there has to be a little bit more of a plan there. I like the blitzes. I like them able to get a little bit aggressive, something that, we need to see, especially with a quarterback. Get him off kilter. A guy like Kirk Cousins, you want to get him off kilter. This weekend with a guy like Carson Wentz, you want to be able to make him have to kind of drop his eyes a little bit, make him think, try to get him thinking he can run with the ball, extend the play, and hopefully you get a sack or get a fumble or something along the lines of that. But right now they're just not getting home enough that they should be. And I think that's a little bit concerning. And I think what you're saying is they have 2 first-round draft picks next year. A defensive edge rusher needs to be one of those because you need to start building with younger players in that position. You did it. You saw it. You saw it this draft season with getting a guy like Cam Jurgens, getting a guy like Jordan Davis. You need to start getting some younger players to eventually. Yeah, they're going to be the ones that are going to, be the reign. They're gonna be the stars on the team, and they have to be able to do that. So that's definitely something that I'd be looking to. And even on the free agent market, looking at a veteran now. Again, I don't know.
Say Jason Pierre-Paul.
Steven Means, trade for him.
Jason Ryan Kerrigan's still available.
D Ford,
he retired.
And now he's teaching their defensive linemen how to not be useful.
Yeah, that's my only concern is getting a guy that winds up giving you the impact of what Kerrigan gave you all regular season, which was nothing.
And then he got what, 1 tackle?
Yeah, and he got 2 sacks in the playoff game.
I know you were Kerrigan watch.
When I broke down how many $1 million he made per tackle last year.
Oh God.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
It was.
I am excited about this team, though. I think that they have made humongous strides. And if you look at like bounce back games, like Jonathan Gannon got absolutely his tail kicked in Detroit. He had a great bounce back game. He's got to bottle whatever that was and utilize it. After the Detroit game, when we did the post game show for that game, I ragged on James Bradbury a little bit, not because of his coverage ability, but because of his tackling ability. It was very Asante Samuel-like, where you can't always hit things. You can play great defense, but you can't always hit things. I think that got better. I still see Bradbury missing a couple tackles here and there, but overall, again, we're seeing improvements. We're seeing this team grow. And yeah, I'm going to be honest, I'm not really worried about this weekend. I think we have a couple games on our schedule that could be trickier. This game doesn't worry me.
So one little fun fact, the last time the Eagles beat a Kirk Cousins-led team was 2017.
On the way to the Super Bowl.
I was at that.
That was Case Keenum was quarterback then. Yeah, Case Keenum was the quarterback of the Vikings on the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because he won the 2 other games in 2018 with the Vikings against the Eagles in Philly and 2019 in Minnesota. He won both of those games against the Eagles, and then he lost the 2 games in 2017. They were losses. The week 1 game and the Monday night game, which they had all those injuries. But
I was at the opener, by the way, when Fletcher Cox recovered that fumble, ran in for a touchdown. That's the part of the end zone that I was in.
Well, speaking of that play, tomorrow morning you may see it.
Hey.
I will say this, though. I'll give Cousins credit for one thing. There was a pass that he threw to Adam Thielen Monday night.
On the sideline.
Well, I'll tell you what. That was a really good coverage. He put that ball where Thielen could get it and nobody else. And I for the abuse that he took during the course of that game to stand there in the 4th quarter and make that throw, I was like, good for you, Kirk. I mean, you may never win a playoff game, but you are a millionaire and you have a decent enough arm.
Well, that was how I felt when on Jalen Hurts' first incompletion. That throw to Dallas Goedert was incredible.
Goddard should have had that.
Goddard should have had.
Stop.
Don't get me started.
There's actually
Don't get me started. He's doing okay this season. But he's still that he drops a bad one every game.
Did you know Ruben Frank had a stat? I listened to it on the Eagle Eye podcast. With his receptions, Dallas Goedert is actually one of the most efficient, not just tight ends, but receivers in the NFL.
I can say it.
With what he does with his reception. And he made a comment too. I never really thought about it, but every time Goddard catches a ball, he seems to make at least one person miss after the catch. Yeah. And as much as we love Zach Ertz,
he was not good at the yak.
But Zach Ertz would have caught that pass.
Yeah,
100%.
Zach Ertz was a heck of a route runner. He was sure-handed. Absolutely. He just didn't break tackles, a lot of tackles whatsoever. But again, he was one of the best tight ends in the Eagles' history.
Do you think Zach Ertz is a Hall of Famer?
Borderline.
He's borderline. He's going to have to do something in Arizona.
Yeah, depending on what he does just because of the way tight ends are used now and the way the stats are with the Travis Kelce's and the George Kittles and Darren Waller, the type of stats that they're putting up. Borderline. To me, it's borderline. If he has a couple good seasons in Arizona, could definitely put him over the top there. But no, it's just watching, like what you were saying, Chip, watching the throws that Jalen Hurts was making and attempting is something you didn't see last year.
No.
Last year, a lot of those so-called throws, like a couple of them when he would scoot out of the pocket, he'd be running for 2, 3, 4 yards because either he didn't want to make the throw downfield, didn't want to do anything like that. Even, the Dallas Goedert throw was great. What about the throw that was the Jordan Mailata hold, which I don't think was a hold at all, where he was escaping to his left, then, twisted his hips and threw it to Quez Watkins on the sideline for a completion that wound up getting negated because of the penalty. That, again, was one of the better throws of the night as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing literally every right thing. He's saying every right thing. Mike, you alluded to the interception. It was not on him at all.
It was tipped.
It was tipped.
I think Sirianni took blame for that. Apparently, calling that play, he took blame in his press conference today, saying that the way that they designed, the way they changed it up, it was too quick so I guess I don't know if it was Gainwell supposed to get out a little bit deeper for the throw, not as close to the line, the offensive line. But again, it is what it is. Tip balls, that happens all the time. Carson Wentz had plenty of tipped interceptions. They're still interceptions, unfortunately.
Yeah, Captain Home Run doesn't concern me anymore. But I do want to get into our last segment of the night here. It's one of our favorites. It is.
It's time for the Ulecka Locks of the week. Who's your lock?
All right. I want that voice one time so badly. I want that voice one time so badly to say, instead of "Who's your lock," to say "Who's your daddy."
Don't worry, I'll work. We'll work on that for you.
Okay, Max, appreciate it.
So last week's Ulecka Locks, Chip had Justin Jefferson 150 yards and a touchdown.
Love being wrong.
And he did say A.J. Brown over 100 yards, which also didn't happen. I said Hurts 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. It was flip-flopped. Again, I was wrong there. He did have 3 total touchdowns, but again, that's not what I said. So I will take the 0 on that. And of course, Mike again hits on his Ulecka Lock.
Hey.
Devontae, well, he said 3 for 50, and then he said 4 for 60. He had 7 for 80. So, again, Mike's right. Ask his wife, he'd be wrong. So,
I love seeing Devontae get more targets too, by the way.
I agree with
Again, they saw a problem and they fixed it. I can't argue with that.
Before we get into the Ulecka Locks, I'm going to put one little tidbit for this week's game in regards to Devontae Smith. Probably be playing in the slot. I could see him playing that because Christian Kirk had over 115 yards and 9 catches week 1 in the slot. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, the NFC Offensive Player of the Week, which, okay. He also had 116 yards on 8 catches and 2 touchdowns, I believe, playing in the slot. So that is a big-time weakness for the secondary of the Washington Commanders, is their slot cornerback position and playing in there. So you could see the Eagles deploy Devontae because that's going to be a tough coverage in the slot with him. So with the Ulecka Locks, we'll have Mike go last since he is the winner. So Chip, we'll have you go first. What is your Ulecka Lock?
So I am going to go to a different game. As much as I would love to stay in this game, I'm going to go to a different game. And the game that I would like to focus on, I want to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo.
Why?
Because anyone who listens or watches any show that I am ever on knows that I think absolutely, again, I hope he gets better, but I think absolutely nothing of Trey Lance as an NFL quarterback. When he got hurt, that team's chances of being everything that they are supposed to be went up exponentially. They're playing against a team that Russell Wilson still has not figured out what the hell he's supposed to do in Denver. My Ulecka lock this week is that the 49ers will beat the Denver Broncos by at least 10 points.
Killing me.
Okay. Not too bad. I think you also have a little bit of a man crush on Jimmy G because you think he's so handsome.
It's not even that. I think he's gotten a raw deal. I think you're taking a quarterback that led you to the NFC Championship, that led you to a Super – or he didn't lead you to a Super Bowl. He led you to an NFC Championship. And you kind of just
led
cut
him
him
to a
loose.
Super Bowl.
He led him to Super Bowl. That's right. And they just like, oh, Trey Lance. Like, you don't do that. And I do think that if – kind of looking bigger picture here, if Jimmy Garoppolo does lead this team to a NFC Championship, you have a quarterback controversy.
Well, no, the thing is he's a free agent and they can't franchise him. And
I
gone after
understand.
this year. So he's working for a position for next year on a team to be a starting quarterback. So this is
But there is no if he leads this team to an NFC Championship, there is no way that Trey Lance gets a fair shot in San Francisco.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a possibility Jimmy Garoppolo, if Brady actually retires, Jimmy Garoppolo goes to Tampa Bay.
He just keeps following his footsteps.
And I will tell you this: I read an article today. Apparently, Jimmy Garoppolo to the Commanders was very close.
Yeah.
And then he had shoulder surgery and they backed out. So
is Jimmy Garoppolo to the Rams, I believe.
Also, hats off to you, Indy, for saying we don't want Carson Wentz. We want Matt Ryan instead. How's that working out for you?
Where's that wah-wah sound?
It is right here. And way to waste Jonathan Taylor and Frank Reich, Indianapolis. Good job.
Well, Indianapolis deserves nothing.
I mean, I really don't care. I care about Jonathan Taylor because I like Jonathan Taylor. But
yeah,
he's killing my fantasy numbers.
So.
Luckily, I had Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week.
Yeah,
who'd have thought?
So I'll give my Ulecka lock now. I'm going to go away from the Eagles, like Chip did, just because I want to try to do something different. Since I've not been able to hit on any of mine yet, so yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go with the Giants and Cowboys game.
Ugh.
And I am going to say that Micah Parsons is going to have at least 2 sacks. Just because he's just unbelievable. And unfortunately, he is a Cowboy.
Ugh.
But
it sucks.
So that brings us to Mike with his Ulecka lock.
All right, my Ulecka lock. I wrote this down before Chip said his, but mine, just because someone's winning by 10. The Bengals rebound. They go to East Rutherford, and they beat the Jets, who have been playing very well, by the way, with former Eagle Joe Flacco at the helm. They beat them by at least 10 points.
Okay.
I don't think we stayed away from Eagles.
I don't think the Bengals are going to be down for very long, to be honest with you. They got that little bit of the Super Bowl loser hangover, which happens. We've seen it. We've seen it here in 2005. So
they're not out of it. Their division isn't run. No one's running away 2-0. You know, I see they'll be in it as long as they can string some wins together here. They can't fall too much into a big hole just because of the way the AFC is.
Yeah, for sure. Especially the AFC West, man.
Yeah.
That division is brutal. Like you have the NFL is weird this year. You have like the AFC West is the premier division, and then you have a couple other good teams here and there in the AFC, and then in the NFC you have like the Packers might figure it out. Tampa Bay is good. In the AFC, obviously the Bills are fantastic. Then like the Eagles are good. Somehow the Giants are 2.0. So, but I can also see the Giants finishing like 2-15. That's the thing.
Right.
And also Kenny.
I'll give him 5-6 wins.
How about Kenny Galladay? 2 snaps.
He is not pleased.
I don't blame him.
He made some comments today, or I guess yesterday at some point. He is not pleased.
Well, you know, he had a bad year last year. So you want to get the guy involved. You have him play 2 snaps. Well, like, of course you're gonna be pissed. There's a lot of teams out there that could use a guy like Kenny Galladay right now.
The thing about it is, it's his salary, his cap number. Giants have issues with the cap, so I don't think he can go anywhere realistically until next year. But again, that's their problem. And now we're going to get into the predictions. Last week, again, like we stated, Chip had the Vikings, and the rest of us, including our guest, had the Eagles. So what do we got for this week? I will start with you, Chip.
Eagles are not losing this game. Number one, I know it is now an official sellout crowd, and we were talking about percentages of Eagles fans to Commanders fans. We're rolling, 1,000 deep?
1,100, Vince told me, from Philly Sports.
Just our trip alone is rolling in 1,100 deep.
Yeah.
The Eagles are not losing this game. The Eagles are going to win this game. They're going to click on all cylinders. Some of them are going to there's no loyalty to Carson Wentz in this locker room. They'll be nice and they'll say hello and everything, but then they're going to sit on his head. And I'm going to love every second of it as the Eagles win this game 34-17.
Ooh.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
I think it's a little bit closer. Division game, not much closer though, Chip. I'll say that. Division game on the road, I'd feel a little bit more confident in Chip's prediction if we were at home, to be honest with you. But it's going to kind of feel like a home game. I went and saw Penn State play Temple at the Link once, and I saw like 1,000 Temple fans there. Could be close to what we see in, where is it, Landover? I guess who the fuck cares?
Hyattsville, Maryland, Landover. Who the hell knows?
Whatever. Fuck you and fuck your stadium. Birds win 28-17.
All right. 28-17.
That should be a sound drop. Fuck you and fuck your stadium.
Yeah, I like that actually. So I'm going to go with the Eagles as well. One thing that Lake did say that kind of made my ears perk up a little bit. He talked about soft zone. And I feel like if the Washington Commanders play soft zone, I feel the Eagles can pick them apart with their weapons on offense. Just take a look at what the Eagles did on Monday night. If they're going to be playing that, the Eagles are going to be able to maneuver their way up and down the field. So I'm going to go with the Eagles win 30-20, and 20 points is only because Washington scores a late touchdown.
Like a junk one?
Yes. So that's where I'm going on there. Eagles 30-20. But right there brings us weekly report. I think we're about done here and ready to go to Washington.
Yeah.
If you're down there, DM us. Come say hi.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All the great sponsors are in the bio. We're not going to shout them out right now. We're coming up on an hour. Make sure you're checking them out. But especially, Philly Sports Trips for putting this one together. And I know they're looking to start putting some other ones together. They have trips all over the place, all over the country. So make sure you're checking them out. And as we end every show here on the AAT Sports Network and the AAT Birds, very positive, very happy. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.